So I have a number of questions that I would like to put to Mike, and then, assuming we have time, open it up again to the audience, and after this we'll be having a break so you can pin people down outside. But Mike, let's start by you telling me, if you can, about privacy and security within Telstra. How do they intersect?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And if I may, I just obviously say good morning, everyone. And I am delighted to be here. Rob, I'm a little bit uncomfortable being referred to as the man of the moment. I understand Yolanda might actually be in the audience today, so the journalist who wrote that article, thank you so much for capturing the words faithfully. The headlines may be the tagline for that report, maybe not, but actually it was great to see it faithfully captured. For me, these issues are fundamentally linked, and for Telstra, privacy and security are fundamentally linked. You simply cannot separate them. To give you some context though, for our company, the number one priority in everything we do is our customer. So we're a customer-led organisation, and it's clear in that regard as we work to keep our customers' data safe and our network secure. You can't separate privacy and security. I will take this opportunity to introduce Vanessa Swanee, sitting up at the back there. She's our new Chief Privacy Officer and Deputy Chief Risk Officer. And as Vanessa's already discovered in this role, we two are going to become best friends. And if we're not, then we know we've got a problem. And our teams work together all the time on this. Okay. The final point I'd like to make is, because we're a customer-first company, this is not simply about meeting our legal obligations. We care about our customers. We care about keeping their data safe and our network secure. And as a values-led organisation, that's why security and privacy are absolutely linked.
So you say they're linked, but some would argue that privacy and security are absolutely opposed.
Yeah.
What's your view?
Well, in fact, last week in IT News, I read an article that was suggesting that there is no balance to be found between privacy and security. Yeah. And as Toby talked about in the introduction, and by the way, Toby, I really did enjoy that graph. That's not too academic. It's a nice way of bringing it to life. I want to challenge that view that you can't find a balance between privacy and security. I get the argument and the starting point of the argument, but I think Toby's absolutely right. This is not as simple as it first seems, and to simply say they're absolutely opposed, it can't be right. And it's interesting that I'm now about to quote the Director of the National Security Agency, because here's a little hint. I'd like to see more of our agency heads talking on this subject, but I understand perhaps why they don't. But recently he also was talking about this issue, and for him it was great to hear that he recognises privacy and security are paramount and they can work together, and you can't say you can have one without the other. And that reinforces Toby's message this morning.
So let's talk about security for a moment, and I recognise that you are in a public company from the private sector, but what are the fundamental issues surrounding security that you observe?
The number one issue today is still general awareness across the community, across the world, and in the business sector. So first and foremost, security is a business risk, not an IT risk. And if, as an organisation or even an individual, if you're thinking about this purely as an IT issue that you'll leave to your trusted IT provider or your own abilities to manage your own personal IT, unfortunately, I've got news for you. You're going to have a really hard time managing this risk. Absolutely important. And for some reason, the world continues to struggle with understanding the significance of this risk. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we go through.
So security, though, is typically thought of from a corporate perspective. Where does the customer fit in terms of your view of security?
Well, again, it's everything, drives everything we do. My team's purpose, actually we have two purposes. Our unofficial mission statement is to think evil, to do good. You understand why we're saying that. That's actually, you've just got to think ways of information can be lost. But actually the real purpose of my team is actually to protect the privacy and security of our customers in Telstra. And you know, your starting question about are they linked. So I'm not the Chief Privacy Officer. My team is a security operates team, but its purpose is to help our company protect the privacy and security of our customers in the company. So it starts always with our customer. In Telstra, we are, in Australia, we touch the lives of almost every Australian. Whether it's through our consumer, small business, enterprise and government customers, and indirectly through our wholesale, we are effectively touching the lives of almost every Australian. The customer is at the centre of everything we do, so security starts with them.
So what then are the biggest threats to organisations?
So it's a good question. So, and I'll if you bear with me here, I'll just go through a bit of a story. So it is important to think about where the threat comes from and what the threat is to your organisation. But in a minute, I'll talk about some of the distractions to understanding that. So there's no doubt, and we love to put the cyber word in front of everything these days. I don't know if you've noticed that. So we talk about cybercrime, cyber espionage and hacktivism. Actually, cybercrime is just crime. It's, crime is bad enough. We don't need to put the cyber word in front of it. Espionage, cyber espionage is just espionage, and hacktivism is just protest through use of technology or online means. So there's nothing new in that. People are struggling with the understanding of this, and there's a lot of hype around this. And unfortunately, that hype, I don't think, helps. So we hear language around the threat hype. And actually, with all due respect to our previous speaker, I can see the case where there is more sophistication in some actors, but generally, a lot of what we see today is not sophisticated. And that's actually the crying shame of this issue. So you're right, and we should be worried about the sophisticated end of the threat scale, but actually most of what befalls organisations today actually is not sophisticated. And the interesting thing for me is some would say 2015 was the year of the data breach. If you look at well-known public reported activities, the top 13 data breaches in 2015 resulted in 197 million customer records being lost. That's a bad day for team privacy and team security across the globe. Yet, interestingly, we still struggle, and organisations still struggle with dealing with this issue.
So I'm struggling with this because if I listen to you, there was a large volume of issues, and certainly Mr. Chandrasekhar put some pretty devastating statistics and examples up in our last presentation, but you're also saying that a lot of the activities aren't of dramatic scale and potentially consequence. Should cybersecurity be keeping us awake at night?
Yeah, so there was actually, and I must find this cartoon and send it to you because it was actually really good. There was a cartoon recently I saw that actually what was keeping CEOs, CFOs, Chief Operating Officers and CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers awake at night. And I'm sure the cartoonist was having a little bit of fun with this, but the CEO, the CFO and the Chief Operating Officer were all fast asleep in bed and the CISO's bed was empty. Now, a little bit of fun, I'm sure, being had there. I suspect that would be the case in a company if you left it to your IT team. You shouldn't leave it to your IT team. God love them, God bless them, and you shouldn't leave it to guys like me alone. And in Telstra, we treat this as a business risk. Every one of the business units understands the importance of this risk. And let's be honest here, successful companies today already know how to manage significant risks well. Successful companies do. The ones that fail are obviously not successful, but successful companies already know how to do that. So if you treat this as a business risk and not an IT risk, you can actually start getting a good handle on how you should manage this risk and what you need to do about it to keep your customers' data safe and your network secure. So
if it's not so much a technology issue but a business issue, how do you translate that practically in the organisation?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways we do that, and I'll talk about two major ways. The first one, in Telstra we have an approach we call the 5 No's of cybersecurity. That's the KNOW, not the friendly security guys know, NO. It's the 5 No's of cybersecurity. It's an approach that is designed to help us manage this risk from the board down, and fundamentally it shifts the conversation from one about technology to one about managing business risk. And they're pretty straightforward. The 5 questions that each business unit has to be able to answer before they can do their risk assessments. First is know the value of your data. So as a business unit or a company, what data that you have that's valuable to you, your customers, maybe your competitors, but definitely the criminals or miscreants out there who might see value in the data. Once you know the value of your data, that valuable data, you must know who in your company or supply chain has access to that data. You must know where that data is. You must know who's protecting it. And finally, you must know how well it's protected. And we argue if you don't know those 5 things, then you're going to have a hard time assessing the business risk that your organisation takes. And we're taking our whole company and all the business units through that exercise at the moment, and it is a very useful exercise to go through with the team in Telstra. The other thing that we do, so we recognise that the people element of this is absolutely critical. So I have a team that's dedicated on cyber influence. And so there you go, we put the cyber word in front of it, but just to give it context, it's an influence team. Their role is about helping every single one of us in the company and our supply chain, so our trusted partners and suppliers, so help them understand the nature of this risk, help them understand what they can do about it, and if they don't know what to do about it, who they can ask to know what to do about it. Right. And if we have our staff and our partners in Telstra and our ecosystem understand in their heads and their hearts the nature of this threat and how to manage this risk, will go a long way to actually help keeping our customers' data safe and our network secure.
The encryption debate, the Apple, the Tim Cook...
I was waiting for that question.
Yeah, it's it's already come up. What's your view?
So I will... I'm going to separate this into 2, right? So, and you'll see why when I do it. So first and foremost, the current issue that Apple is challenging a court order on in the United States actually isn't fundamentally just about encryption. Happy to have a debate about and question that when we do the Q&A, but it's not just about that. So I'll just push that one aside because also it's actually for Apple and the US government to comment on that particular case, not for me or Telstra. Now, having said that, yes, I'm a security professional and I actually care passionately about this problem. So there is no doubt encryption is a fundamental capability that is required in this cybersecurity challenge that we all face. No doubt whatsoever, and even our governments recognise the importance of encryption. Governments not only use encryption or high-grade encryption to protect their secrets, they actually have been encouraging everyone to get better at security so we can stop privacy breaches from occurring and we can protect the economic interests of individuals and companies. So there's no doubt encryption is a fundamentally important capability, but there's no 100% solution here, right? So encryption is an important element, but it's not the silver bullet. Now, having said that, as a security professional, I'm fundamentally on the side of it is wrong and not acceptable to put backdoors in technology because it will cause you a security issue. And let me put that into context for you. So today, the real difference and why this issue is significant, it's actually the use of technology and connectivity that means that crime, espionage, protest, and let's face it, even mistakes can happen at a pace, scale and reach which is unprecedented. So what does that look like? US health insurance provider Anthem loses 79.9 million customer records. If you tried to photocopy a document of 79.9 million customer records, that document would be 1.7 million pages of double-sided paper. If it was on the floor here, it would be 1 kilometre high. If you tried to photocopy it, it would take you 2 months full-time on a really fast photocopier. And if you drove it out of the building, you'd need 3 semi-trailers. I'm pretty sure someone would notice that information being stolen. In cyberspace, that was probably stolen in under 2 hours and delivered across the globe. That's the pace, scale and reach of this problem. That's why it's a significant issue. And because it's a significant issue, we've got to have fundamental building blocks securely enabled to keep customers' data private and networks secure. Now, so that's important. Of course, I fundamentally am happy to live in a country that actually, such as ours, where we have law enforcement capabilities that actually have capabilities that need to do their job, because that is absolutely important. But they're used lawfully with oversight. Absolutely, fundamentally agree with that.
Sure.
Our carrier obligations requires us to do that, and we meet those obligations in every country in which we operate. Having said that, the significant nature of this problem means you can't build backdoors in, because then we come back to that starting point, the balance between privacy and security.
Okay, so maybe it is a question we'll park for later in the Q&A, but as you've just said, the conditions of your carrier license require you to comply with lawful requests for information about phone calls, texts, etc. I guess the challenge is that there are new modes of communication that sit on a platform above your network.
Yeah, so I'll unpack that for those who... so today, obviously, carrier license, we do that. So if we have a new messaging service, we're lawfully required in Australia to provide an interception capability. So should you become a subject of interest and the warrant is in place, that content needs to be given. We'll understand how that works. If an app provider in a foreign country develops a fantastic app that we'll start using, there's no obligation on that app provider to provide access to the communications of that service, which is, we call in our industry, over-the-top application. That's kind of an interesting issue that obviously governments need to come out and publicly debate how they will handle that. Now, that's my view. In Telstra, our view here is that we will help governments in all the countries in which we operate adapt to this challenge. That's one example of where we can give them bit-perfect copies of our communications, but actually if an over-the-top application is play, we can't give them access to the communications they need to do their lawful job.
Okay. All right, let's move on. You've already mentioned when you're operating in other countries, you comply with the regulations in those countries, but Telstra is also active in the M&A field. How does this area influence your judgment or process?
Yeah, certainly. So like any good materials and acquisition due diligence process, cybersecurity is something that must be done just like you do your financial due diligence and all the other ranges of due diligence, including the risk lens that you apply to all of that. So for us, cybersecurity due diligence is a separate stream in our M&A activities. And of course it would be. It's a significant risk for any organisation. How that plays out in an M&A process actually depends on the nature of the company you're looking to acquire or merge with, because actually some companies might be some super sensitive intellectual property. Of course, in this day and age, reasonable foreseeable event, someone would attempt to steal that information. You've got to do really good due diligence. If it's another case where the data is not the asset and you're buying a company for another reason, what you actually do is, in the end, dependent on that. And in the end, cybersecurity M&A is actually an expectation management problem, because today, everyone should know it's a reasonable foreseeable event. Someone will attempt to steal data from you by hacking means, delete your data or deny you access to your data, because we see examples of that every day.
Okay, great. Are there any questions in the audience? It's a great opportunity to nail Mike with a probing question of how Telstra operates. Here we go.
Please do.
Thanks, Mike. Jordan Race from New South Wales Education. I understand you're building a great team at Telstra, and I know that Tobias talked this morning about 1.5 million jobs being a shortage in the cybersecurity industry in the future. What's your advice on how we can educate those people that are going to go into those jobs and also acquire and attract them to cybersecurity jobs to get ahead of the curve? I know, as Andy France mentioned at your presentation a few weeks back, we're not getting ahead of it. The CVEs are increasing, the attacks are still happening, and the data leaks are still happening. So how can we fill those jobs appropriately?
So it's a great question, but I always love to challenge Toby and others on figures like this. So there's no doubt that the need for good security is actually there. I think we all understand that. And then it's easy to say we need more smart people or more people into this space. I kind of like to challenge that in terms of, if we think about it as a business risk, and then actually require the discipline in your service provider, your cloud storage provider, your telco, whatever, pick your favourite, whether you do it internally or you buy it from someone. It's generally the discipline and the application of that business management risk that will get you a nicer, secure outcome, as in terms of you managing the risk, not eliminating the threat. So I kind of like to approach it that way, and that was Andy's point. So Andy France was arguing that industry and our approach has got it wrong because we continue to fail. Start at a business risk, start at knowing those 5 things and drive that behaviour through your organisation, and start knowing it's a people issue just as much as it is a technical issue. Now, having said that, I've got no doubt there's a need for more smart people in the tech space who can apply their bright, brilliant minds to this problem. When you see our government talk about the importance of innovation and they announce the Cyber Growth Centre, absolutely there's a high demand. a previous speaker also talked about that need for innovation. The challenge that you got from your Indian Prime Minister, absolutely great. There's no doubt this is a national, global challenge that needs that talent. There's a shortage there. What can we do? Well, we need to start young. So we need to encourage this in our young guys and girls at a very early age. And I will actually say, isn't it great on International Women's Day that we have a great diverse mix in this room right now? Because there's the other problem. Just the challenge of just getting one half of the gender divide into this problem ain't going to help us, and we're missing out a great opportunity. So we've started off, we do find it hard to find really experienced individuals, so we're starting to build our own. And we're not only taking people out of universities through our graduate program, we'll go elsewhere to the TAFE colleges and finding some bright young people, or even individuals, guys and girls coming out of high school with the right passion and aptitude, and we'll train them up. And we're finding that effective, but I think more need to do that.
Interesting. All right, in the interest of time, can I just ask one more closing question, and that really, Mike, is to you around what is your parting comment, your one piece of wisdom for this room as we leave for our break.
So Rob, I'm always going to take latitude here. I've got three things. It's the one piece of wisdom, there's three things. And now I'll probably mess it up because I would have forgotten them. It's pretty straightforward. Know this is a business risk, absolutely first and foremost. Know the value of your data. Start there. That, generally, if you understand the value of something, you then take the right actions as a result. And finally, and really important, despite all the hype in this world, actually this threat cannot be eliminated, but this risk can actually be managed effectively.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to sleep better tonight as a result of that. Everybody, join me in thanking Mike Burgess from Telstra.
Thank you.